June 24th, 2024. Forever etched in South Florida sports history. Congratulations, South Florida. The Florida Panthers are Stanley Cup champions.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, June 25th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez in Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at MondoMan12, follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stopped sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So the Florida Panthers, what a journey it has been for them. And in this championship round, getting to the cup for the second straight year. And the message was clear from the start to get back to the Stanley Cup final after everything from last year with being battered and bruised and having nothing left. But for the Panthers, getting off to a great start, dealing with injuries to start the season, and also asserting their dominance on the road, winning the last 4 home games to get the Atlantic Division crown, making easy work out of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Boston gave them a great challenge. New York, too. Going through the gauntlet of goaltenders for the Panthers. And even at points, dominating the first 3 games of the Stanley Cup final. And then there was doubt for the Panthers after surrendering a 3-0 series lead. And with a whole bunch of odd man rushes, breakaways, it looked as if the Edmonton Oilers were going to do the impossible. But the Florida Panthers stuck to their game. They stuck to their structure and their identity. They get out to a lead early. Carter Verhaeghe and Sam Reinhart were on the score sheet. 2 guys who had struggled in the Stanley Cup final, but the Stars came to play to get the Florida Panthers their first Stanley Cup championship in franchise history. And speaking of history, I teased it on yesterday's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast how history was going to be made one way or the other. And for the Panthers, they did it. A 2-1 victory once again, and champions forever. They get to walk together, and this means so much to so many people, alum, everyone, you name it. And joining me here on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast to recap not only this 2-1 win for the Florida Panthers over the Edmonton Oilers in Game 7 of the final, but to talk about their first ever Stanley Cup championship. He is Florida Panthers historian, Francisco Oporta. Francisco, my friend, we just witnessed history.
It's almost like you can't believe it. I've been a fan of hockey since my brother-in-law introduced me to the game. He's a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. And I remember they took me to a Florida Panthers game. It was the Panthers versus the Carolina Hurricanes back in 2009. And I instantly fell in love with the game. It was 2009, 2010 season, I think around November. I think that's when they played them. And I've been a massive fan ever since. And I've kind of parlayed that into a bit of carving out my own little niche in the media through Litterbox Cats and meeting amazing group of people that I've associated with the Florida Panthers. There's a whole ecosystem of people that are involved with this team. Speaking of, a team that's, man, they did it the hardest way that they could, huh? It was the epitome of this franchise in a way. A blazing glory of a beginning, a really awful and dark middle, and now we are in the midst of the greatest era of Florida Panthers history. Right at the end, the Stanley Cup final epitomized the franchise, um, and I'm very happy for everyone that's been along this journey, with me and everyone associated with the team since 1993. A lot of people have come and gone, um, and I think it means the world to everyone because this team and this fan base and anyone associated with it has gone through hell just to legitimize themselves, and now this cup is the ultimate stamp of approval from the hockey gods. It's going to be etched in silver, in sterling. So they can't take that away.
No. And validation for the market too. And after moving out of Miami in the late 90s to Sunrise, Florida, and everything in between, the 12-year playoff drought, the multiple ownership changes, the different names of the arena, National Car Rental Center, Office Depot, Bank Atlantic, BB&T, FLA Live Arena, to this, to everything with this one. And you think the Panthers doing it the hard way, and comeback cats. We spoke about it, how even 2 years ago with the Panthers and their running gun style offense, and just not having any hope after winning the President's Trophy and getting swept. How did the Panthers recover from that, and then making that franchise changing move and bringing Matthew Tkachuk? It's crazy to think that 2 100-point players were being swapped out, and the last time that happened was Jimmy Carson and Wayne Gretzky in the late 80s, and the Panthers defeat the team that Wayne Gretzky played for too. So crazy to think how it all comes full circle for the Panthers, and to think that the Panthers got out early and with the lead. They were the first to score too, out that tip in from Carter Verhaeghe, which he was off of power play 1 back to power play 2, and even though it was a few seconds after the power play expired, power play 2 was the one who technically did it again. It won't say on the score sheet that they got on that they added that power play percentage, but think about how they overcame Sam Reinhart on a counter attack too, to make it to a 2-1 lead. And also Dmitry Kulikov, after leaving for a little bit for him, made a great play with the net slightly open. And
Biggest save of the game.
His save percentage was 1,000 there. And coming back for him being after a first round pick in 2009, bring it up the ice. And then the Panthers, they got to stick to their style of game. Paul Maurice spoke about how after the second period, they were playing the right way. And also, remember, I remember just thinking, this isn't the time to lash out on your team. This is the time to stick together and still hype the guys up and say, we got this, guys. You can do it. And encouraging, because the Panthers never had a sense of panic too. That's the craziest thing about that. And that's what happens when you have a guy who's been coaching since 1995 in the NHL level. I was 2 when Paul Maurice made his head coaching debut. So to give you guys an idea of that. And now with all the experience, all the regular season losses, Paul Maurice coming here and that franchise-changing move in Matthew Tkachuk, all solidified for the Stanley Cup. And crazy to think the late game situations for the Panthers. On the penalty kill, Gustav Forsling breaks his stick, and Stenlund has to give his stick where Gustav Forsling is a left-handed shot while Stenlund is a right-handed shot. And also the guys getting together. Eetu Luostarinen came to play. Brandon Montour and Gustav Forsling made probably the best play of the game when McDavid was pushing over and over and over again, and they still found a way with their structure. Amazing, Francisco.
I think the biggest difference that we saw from today in comparison to the nightmare that was games 4, 5, and 6. It was a nightmare. I think every single person that affiliated with the Panthers in any sort of way, that was truly a nightmare of a period that we went through. Everybody went through every single emotion that you could imagine. And Panthers score. Then Janmark scores on a breakaway. But then, unlike the other games, it didn't result in panic from the Panthers. And once the first period ended and it was 1-1, it was the best period of hockey the Panthers had played since game 3. Mm-hmm. And you felt as the second period started, that what we were watching was Florida Panthers hockey again, that way we've been used to since the beginning of the postseason in 2023. And it instilled a confidence, I think, in myself personally watching the game, that they somehow refigured out what they were doing and how they got here. Just thinking about every challenge, the team that had always the little brother franchise, right, with the Tampa Bay Lightning, Boston Bruins trying to get revenge and failing, and then the New York Rangers, who everyone propped up as the true favorite in the Eastern Conference, and the Panthers take down a goaltender that was carrying that team in that series in the Eastern Conference Final. And then finally, the last gasp, and I'm hearing some people yelling and screaming outside here in Hialeah, by the way.
Love it. Love it.
I'm hearing dogs howling, and so there is some love for the Cats in Hialeah. So the city of progress is progressing in that sense. But then the last gasp, these haymakers thrown by the Edmonton Oilers, and Connor McDavid trying to solidify his legacy. It's not your turn yet, man. So we're sorry. Sorry to everyone. Okay, the LeBron James of the NHL. All right, this is your 2007 loss to the San Antonio Spurs, okay? We'll see you in like 5 or 6 years. You can win like 1,000 Stanley Cups after this. We're getting this one.
We need a Tim Duncan. We need a Tim Duncan moment where he's shaking his hand after in the locker room and saying, "This will be your league soon."
And I mean, the ultimate insult to injury, giving him the Conn Smythe trophy. I mean, my goodness gracious.
Who cares?
That's why no other sport does that.
Yeah.
Giving the MVP trophy to the opposing player that lost, because like you can't even interview the guy.
Yeah.
here's a consolation prize, and you might as well just throw it in the dumpster.
First skater since Reggie Leach in the 70s to win the Conn Smythe. First player overall since Jean-Sébastien Giguère in 2003 with the Anaheim Ducks. And the Panthers, 69-0-4 since last January.
Nice.
With having a lead after the second period. Panthers,
the nicest team of all time.
Yes, the nicest team of all time. And also, 31 years after the expansion draft in 1993, the Panthers also win the Stanley Cup 31 years after. So it was like being born, and then exactly 31 years later, the Florida Panthers became complete. And we're going to continue that conversation on the Stanley Cup Championship. We're going to talk about the trophy ceremony for the Florida Panthers and them lifting the cup for the first time and more. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships like the Florida Panthers did just now. And what keeps your ride or die alive? eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one, ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Stanley Cup winning Tuesday edition of the podcast. Finally, we could say that Stanley Cup champions.
I can't. Every tweet that I'm gonna have from here on until they're eliminated next season is gonna be the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. I don't care how many characters I waste by putting all of that.
Well, okay. First of all, I changed the Twitter already to Locked On Stanley Cup Champions. But also second, I also want to take a little bit of advice from a coach in the South Florida sports landscape, in Eric Spoelstra. I don't think there isn't any defending champions, because you can't take away a championship from someone. So it's crazy. I'm not going to go with defending champions next year, because it's forever etched in history. But that's besides the point. That's just my personal mindset with that. But the lifting of the Stanley Cup, Sasha Barkov, and finally, and did you ever imagine that you would hear the words from Gary Bettman's mouth saying, Alexander Barkov, come lift this Stanley Cup, after being the second overall pick in 2013? And all the talk about, they should take maybe Seth Jones or Jonathan Drouin too.
Bust.
And now, 11 years later, after being drafted, Ekblad the very next year, that was the very first draft pick under the Viola ownership. Congratulations to the Violas, by the way. Doug Seafood too on getting that. But Barkov getting to lift the cup, and then the first guy after, Sergei Bobrovsky. And I can say confidently, this might be a hot take. Maybe it's not. But that contract is so worth it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dale Talon.
There's so many Panthers and personnel players and coaches that you have to consider along the way to get to this part, right? To this journey. Wayne Huizenga.
Yes. Paved the way.
Bill Torrey.
Roger Nielsen.
Doug Macklin. Brian Scrudlin and Bill Lindsay and John Van Beesbrook and Paul Laus, and I mean we can keep going down the list. Rob Niedermeyer, Ed Jovanovski. You keep going to each and every era. Peter Worrell and then you go Olli Jokinen, Roberto Luongo banged the drum.
Yes,
he's got his Stanley Cup ring. Maybe not the way he had imagined he would get it, but he got it. Roberto Luongo, Olli Jokinen, Pavel Bure, Stephen Weiss, Tomas Vokoun, David Booth. You've got, Vincent Trocheck, Nick Bukestad, Jonathan Huberdeau, Dale Talon, Brian Campbell. We were going down. Jaromir Jagr.
Oh man,
a few guys that have their names on the cup already, have lifted it before, but were integral to the makeup of what eventually became this team. It's, gosh, I'm more emotional than I thought it would be, just recalling all of this. And I wasn't through all 30 of these years. I came in relatively like the last third of this journey for the Panthers, really. And there were others that went through the glorious beginning, the dark ages in the middle, and are finally here. So I can only imagine how much those people feel, like you said, validation, that validated for their fandom, for South Florida, for the growth of the sport down here, and it is a beautiful game.
Oh,
It is. It's an
absolutely.
amazing game, and I hope this will spark. The spark is already out there. It's already been sparked. We have this new practice facility out in Fort Lauderdale, and it's not even finished yet. That's the beauty of that. And hopefully there will be more rinks being built around here and more participation in youth hockey, and we'll have our own version of Austin Matthews.
Yes.
Like that's ultimately what I hope will happen for this market. We'll have our first actual Division I college hockey program in this state. Hopefully one day, maybe FSU. I'm so happy for this game because I feel like you and I and a lot of people have fought for this market and for the sport down here. It's hockey. There's no line for where hockey belongs. Just a big old circle around the globe.
It's more than just the game of hockey. It's just also about the region that we love so much too. Sorry, I'm tearing up a little bit. Sorry, as someone who's from West Kendall, Florida, who there wasn't a lot of conversation around about the sport of hockey. 40 miles south of the arena too. Yeah, Kendall Ice Arena. I could walk to it from my residence, and a little bit of Florida Panthers marketing. Not really. They had the draft poster up right to the left when you enter. And actually, I went for a skate there after Game 6. Funny enough, just to ease my mind, to cope a little bit. But just for the buy-in too of this place that we love so much. You being a Palm Beach County native, and then moving to Hialeah, and then seeing how much it's grown. Also, UF and hockey winning club championships too recently too. So eventually,
Blades in the ECHL.
Yes.
3 times Stanley Cup champions. We have the Solar Bears in Orlando. We have the Icemen in Jacksonville. The Lightning with all their success that really was showed us the prototype of what this could be in influencing the Panthers and how they did their things. Not to step on your thing there, but just joining in on you.
Yeah, but it means so much to a lot of people here, and just the jokes, the Panthers are a nobody. They're going to move to Quebec and all. And I also hate to bring this up, but it also comes just what's going on in the news lately with Arizona, with the land auction, and then recently, right before we recorded, about Alex Morello surrendering ownership of the Coyotes too. And me being so vocal about the Arizona Coyotes move to Utah, because I always think about one thing, that this could have been the Florida Panthers too. That's why it's to not take a moment like this for granted. And the fact that people from the outside and just the gatekeeping mentality that happens in the sport, that's why we need to fight for it so much, the pride. And I get that there's with the country of Canada and the invention of the sport, or perfecting it, whatever you want to call it. And then, the pride in it. And then, but funny enough, a lot of Canadians moved down here too. That's the other thing for this. But for it to be shared around a place like South Florida too. Yeah, the Lightning made 3 straight finals too. And the Everblades, a 3-peat too for them. It's grown, the amount of growth that you're seeing. One of the big name defensemen in the NHL right now is a South Florida native, and Jacob Chikrin. You have other guys who have been junior Panthers, and Sam Gagner, players like Andrew Peak too. Some guys who are from the Seamus Casey's, who recently signed Cam Fowler, Melbourne, Florida native.
Mm-hmm.
It's growing just so much, because winning does a lot. It cures so many emotional scars too. And think about what the Panthers also had to go through with a few coaching changes from 2021 with everything with Coach Q, the questions about Andrew Burnett, and then questioning whether it was the right decision to bring Paul Maurice in. So that's another of the battered and bruised. And think about this. In the same year, in 2016, the Marlins and the Panthers both had GMs coming from the front office and becoming the coach too. The Tom Rowe coming from the front office to coach the Panthers after the whole taxi cab thing with Gerard Gallant after he was fired in Raleigh, North Carolina on that, I believe it was November or December, very early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
That's another part of the history of the amount of cuts fans have had to go through.
There's a lot of dark times and a lot of names that people, shudder when they hear them, right? Mike Keenan,
Stanley Cup champion Mike Keenan,
Tom Rowe, Michael Yormark. There's a lot of vitriol there, but it is the makeup of this franchise, and it's a miracle that the franchise has survived. I'm thinking about other markets, and there are Canadian markets that wouldn't have survived dark times like that, for sure. And somehow the Panthers, thank goodness they had an arena set up, or else it would have been the same situation like Arizona. And there's a lot of points where it could have turned bad, but then just like this inkling of hope. Right, the 2011-2012 team, the first team to make the playoffs after more than a decade of futility,
with a minus 24 goal differential too.
They weren't supposed to make the postseason that year. It was supposed to be a bunch of washed up veterans and a few young guys sprinkled in there, and they were just gonna try and just play out the season and bridge the gap to the high draft picks, but they win the Southeast Division, the only one that the franchise ever won when they were in that division, because of an off year by the Lightning and the Capitals that season, and then the tanking, but we get Barkov, we get Ekblad through all of that, and that 2015-16 season, right? We come in and you have all these grizzled and experienced veterans of Luongo and Yager and Willie Mitchell and Sean Thornton and just a bunch of guys, and they have the greatest regular season to that point in franchise history, and then they blew it up. They went a little, I'm not against analytics. I mean, this team is built on analytics right here. This 23-24 Florida Panthers Stanley Cup Championship team. But sometimes you can read the numbers pretty wrong, and the Panthers read it pretty wrong around that era. But then,
which Gerard Gallant was not a fan of analytiof too. That's why
that is true as well. You need a total buy-in from everybody, and one of the greatest hires of franchise history, Bill Zito. Absolutely, and it was so amazing to see how emotional he was down there on the ice, just bawling because his journey is incredible. There's so many amazing journeys and throughout this entire season of this franchise, and you have people who have been here since the beginning, and you have people who just recently got here, but they all contributed in some sort of way. We welcome every single person that became a fan during this season. Please call us all bandwagoners if you want, Canada. Can I curse? Should I curse? Can I curse?
No,
we haven't cursed so far.
No.
Gosh darn it. Gosh darn it. All right, so I'll keep it there. I'll do it on my own private time then. I'll do a live when I can sometime this week, and then I'll really lay into some franchises and fan bases.
Start a Patreon, and we'll
nah. I'm just gonna go off the hip. I'll probably go live after this, and I'll start doing that. So I'll keep it clean for now, just for you, because we're live.
But yeah, hey, this is the type of emotion that you want, and even the amount of swears that would come out when they're lifting the cup and saying "bleep," yeah, for everyone. It just
muted. Yeah.
And the amount of times even throughout the broadcast where you hear the few seconds like hearing it, oh, somebody cursed. that's every single time I watch a broadcast. I literally say that out loud for that. But we're gonna transition over to segment number 3, where we're just gonna continue the conversation on and just continue the good vibes here, because the Panthers are Stanley Cup champion. Like I said,
man. I'll be up. Let's go.
I'm pulling an all-nighter too. I have a cigar ready for a celebration. I have my pots and pans ready too for a celebration, because it's a 30 years in the making. We might never get this again, and it's here. Stanley Cup champions, and we're going to continue that conversation next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and which getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. The last minute deals, you could save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, comedy, concerts, theater, etc. With Seat Views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and it's the lowest price guarantee. Or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Third and final segment here on this Tuesday, June 25th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday, a Stanley Cup Championship edition of the podcast for the first time ever in the 30-year history of the franchise. And I also think about Paul Maurice being so consistent too. Last year when he was speaking with Jackie Redmond on TNT on that loss in Vegas in Game 5, talking about the one consistent thing about the guys loving each other. Said that once again in his interview with Emily Kaplan this year. Crazy to think also how he was handed the cup. Spencer Knight had the cup for a little bit there, right before handing off. Who do I hand it off to next? And then saying something to his ear, which it's okay if it's private with everything that they've gone through. I'm not going to try to even guess on what they were talking about, but the emotion of Paul Maurice there, the 180. We're going to find out. I haven't checked Twitter. I'm not going to really talk about the injuries right now and who was dealing with what through the postseason, but it's crazy to think that when you think about 210 games through these last two, and also with this Stanley Cup, for those who are watching hockey for the first time and join in on this playoff run, the Stanley Cup is the trophy in sports that does not get replicated. You do not get to keep the cup. And that's the great thing about it too, about winning it. Because like if you walk into the Marlins office or the Miami Heat's offices, you'll see duplicates of the Larry O'Brien and the Commissioner's Trophy in baseball, even with the Vince Lombardi Trophy. But the Stanley Cup, you don't get to keep it. And the greatest thing is your name being on that cup, and you get to be around legends of the game. You get to touch it. Funny enough, for the All-Star weekend, even though I'm not in the NHL, obviously, I wouldn't be doing this podcast if I were, but I didn't touch the cup there. And next time I see the cup, I'm gonna. Oh yeah, I'm gonna finally do it and finally
whatever is allowed.
Whatever is
allowed. That's what I'm doing.
So I will finally get my opportunity to with that. But that's the greatest thing about this sport too.
There's so many things that I didn't do out of fear that the hockey gods would be angry at me. I reversed trend. I didn't. I shaved. I shaved. I didn't grow the playoff beard. I shaved when the Panthers had gone down in the Rangers series,
Mm.
and I'm like,
After the
they need to.
Wenberg overtime winner?
Yeah, after
Yeah.
the Rangers had taken the lead in that series, and I was like, let's gonna reverse course because this ain't working no more. So I instead got rid of the playoff beard, and I just like, I'm not gonna get a haircut. So this hair has been as long as it's gone. I might keep it going though. I want to get the Yager mullet by the opening night. The Panthers are gonna start in Finland, by the way, next season.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be an interesting thing to see. Defending champions starting out outside of the country, and Barkov, the first ever Finnish captain to lift the cup. That'll be an amazing moment. That's going to be fantastic. It's oh wow. There's so many great things that are going to be happening.
Which, by the way, is against the Dallas Stars in both of those matchups. It would have been such a shame if this was a Dallas Stars Florida Panthers matchup and you don't get a rematch even in the States too. So that's another thing that I wanted to point out there. Something I thought about even before this matchup for the Panthers.
They'll just give us the Winter Classic next in 2 seasons here, and we'll be
Lone Depot
fine.
Park?
Yeah, Lone Depot Park. Listen, just because it's winter in the name doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be cold, because so many people from up north spend their winters down here. In fact, a lot of them are season ticket holders. So let's open up Lone Depot Park. I don't care if the roof is open or closed. It doesn't matter. It's still winter down here in South Florida. All right. Let's have some people drop the puck. Let's get Livon, like Edgar Renteria and some folks, and get the Panthers wearing white as the hockey gods intended at home. And then after every goal, we can throw the rats because nobody will be able to reach the ice from that far away. So there's so many different things. I'm going to start buying Stanley Cup patches. I refused to buy them last season. I know a ton of people did it, but I'm going to start buying them now. And I'm going to put them on every single one of the jerseys. I got like 6 jerseys back there. Ooh. I'm getting one for each one.
Yeah, and for Eastern Conference Championship gear, I don't buy Eastern Conference Championship gear unless the team that I cheer for loses. That's the only time. I didn't buy anything this year. So why buy Eastern Conference Championship gear when you buy Stanley Cup Championship gear? And now I cannot wait to go to Pantherland. I cannot I
can't justify the hats because Fanatics does not try
at
all.
Just the t-shirt. That's it. But I also had a little bit of a superstition too. This hair that you're seeing on the YouTube, this is from last year. I do cut the sides here. So a little bit of a change for me, but the first 3 games I spent it in my home base in Central Florida. And then after when they were 1 win away, I drove home to South Florida and went to the Game 4 watch party, watch Game 5 and 6 from my home in West Kendall, my hometown. And then after when they tied it at 3, I said, I have to leave. I have to. Hockey players are superstitious, and I had to be superstitious as well. So I left the region too to watch Game 7 all by myself. I declined invites to watch the game. I was like, no, I had to do this. And thankfully that superstition worked in my case, even though I have no effect on the outcome too. So crazy to think that also with the fan base too, they're going to learn more about hockey superstitions. If they haven't learned about playoff beards, they're going to learn now too. We're going to have more buy-in. So that's another thing for these kind of runs. We're going to see, and I'm going to put a little bit of South Florida flavor here. Ventanita culture in the region. You're going to go to your ventana and people are going to be talking in Espanol about Los Gatos too. So that's the importance of a Stanley Cup championship.
So I live with family here. My aunt, when I walked in the door, because I didn't watch the game at home. I came home from I watched it at work. I walk in and she's like, "Felicidades." I'm like, As if I was the one as if I won the cup. That a lot of people sending me messages, and I'm gonna be, because after they had gone up 3-0, a lot of people were in anticipation that this moment would come a lot sooner. That start talking about their journey as fans, the start of it, and I can't wait to, over the course of these next few weeks and up to the parade and these next few months, to read everybody's journeys as fans from the start, from the beginning, whether you started at the beginning, whether you were a kid when it happened, whether you just became a fan now. Because it's going to be a surreal moment when seeing that the Stanley Cup parade down Las Olas. Everybody kind of almost jokingly talking about that. I until I finally saw it happen, I couldn't imagine the Panthers winning the cup. It was always something that you fantasized through playing NHL on on your Xbox or your PlayStation. So or your Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis back in 1994. So it's a surreal moment for sure.
Absolutely. And is this going to be a great summer of Florida Panthers content for both of us, as you've already launched some of your graphics too?
Yeah, I got gear. I'm gonna put up the merch stuff, and this is unprecedented. I had literally nothing to go on after they won 2 games in the series. I'm like, this is the first time this has ever happened. So we're gonna go through a lot of firsts, and the parade's gonna be amazing. And there's an NHL draft if you haven't heard, because we haven't cared about that in a few years, and it's so refreshing to have.
And I haven't seen a tweet yet on when the parade is. I haven't really checked Twitter. I'm a little overwhelmed right now with the amount of notifications too, to be quite honest. But chances are, with the draft being on Friday, it's going to be on Thursday more than likely, if I had to guess. And then Bill Zito and the rest of his scouting department, they can show up hungover in Vegas. Yeah. They don't have a first round pick. Philly, keep it.
Yeah,
take the pick, even though that was the Claude Giroux trade. There you go.
Yeah, just start they can just start drafting guys in the NBA and MLB draft, and we wouldn't care. Just draft some baseball and basketball players, and be like, yeah, cool.
Yeah, for real. But it's going to be a celebration, and once we hear about the parade, we will definitely be talking about it, and I will definitely be there. I will not miss this for the world. But Francisco, thank you so much for joining me on this live edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, a celebratory edition of the show. And we can finally say that the Florida Panthers are Stanley Cup champions. Tell everybody, my friend, for one last time in this season, where they can follow you online.
So at FLA Cats History, Panthers History on TikTok, and FLA Panthers History on Instagram. I mean, gosh, there's a lot. I have to really focus on this, and I don't even know where to start with, posting stuff, but it'll come naturally as time goes on. I've got Marlins History as well for anybody that wants to be humbled a little bit. You can go back there and be like, okay, and maybe one day the Marlins will return to glory like this. Hopefully they'll get a lot of inspiration out there to do the right things. But anybody that follows me, and I guess I'll say that directly, even though I'll probably post something myself. I want to thank everybody who's been through this journey with me throughout this season. Usually we go down, we're at the end of this, and it already ends in heartache of some sort. But not today. This is the first time that it hasn't ended in heartache, and I can really say that I appreciate every single person that's ever followed me and has liked anything that I've posted, or every member of the Florida Panthers staff and personnel broadcast crew has ever commented and has appreciated what I've posted. And I appreciate all of you, Armando, as well. Everybody that's commenting. I'm seeing the things on the comments here as well. And thank you to every single person out there, and to my family. I saw 2 games in this final. The first one and then a loss, but regardless, I saw the Panthers go through this journey, and rode this roller coaster. And I just want to thank everybody that's out there. So thank you all.
And I want to thank you, more importantly, and congratulations to you for all your journey. And I'm very thankful to all. I want to say this publicly, to call you a friend. So thank you so much, my brother. And
Yeah.
I'll always remember this day, June 24th, 2024, the greatest day in Florida Panthers history. So we will see you again this summer. So and can't wait for our next episode, my friend. So thank you as always, my friend.
All right.
So, Panther fans, usually I end every episode with my typical ending, but I want to take a little bit of a moment, just you and I, to have a little bit of a discussion about the journey of getting here to becoming a Stanley Cup champion for the Florida Panthers and this region. A lot of you have been through the beginning. A lot of you have just hopped along with the ride. South Florida truly loves a winner. With the whole talk about so many things to do in this region, you truly have to sell your product to your people. And boy, when the Viola family purchased the franchise in late 2013, there was still a whole bunch of people who had followed this team and thinking to themselves, prove to us that you can build a winner. From just over 7,000 people at opening night in 2014 to leading the postseason in attendance. That is the craziest thing of it all. That the Panthers have created this winner and going all in on trades, free agent signings, being up against the cap, having to make cap clearing trades. And now, with all the adversity and with it being a close call this time around, their first game that they had to face elimination, they got it done with a lot of stress. But the Florida Panthers, they truly earned it. The Panthers, they overcame some players on the other side setting records. Zach Hyman with the record of most postseason goals. Connor McDavid, most postseason assists. Evan Bouchard, most points from a defenseman. And the Panthers, they still overcame that. And the Panthers have completed their redemption story. And before we sign off here on the night, here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, I want to give you guys a little bit of a quote. I gave you guys a song lyrics quote from Metallica yesterday on the show. But I want to leave you another quote. And this is from a group by the name of Killswitch Engage, from a song called In Due Time. And the quote reads, "All that we suffer through leads to determination. The trials we all go through gives us the strength to carry on. Something within us burns. Desire feeds the will to live. A reason to believe. I will seek redemption." Close quote. Thank you so much for listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe here to the YouTube channel, where it's going to be a very fun summer of off-season content celebrating the Florida Panthers Stanley Cup victory for the first time in their 30-year history. And I can't wait to share all with you guys Much love. This is the sign for love in American Sign Language. So much love to everybody. Have a great summer, and we will be back with you guys very soon. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Francisco Oporta, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.